The SEC has caved, and it's a great day for college football. And Dan Mullen's back in the sport. What to expect this weekend? UCF will be the worst team in the Big 12. All on today's show.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in the greatest sport on planet Earth. Shout out to my everydayers out there. Dan Mullen's back this weekend, and it's all downside this weekend, unfortunately. UCF is going to finish last in the Big 12. I will explain why. This episode brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Football season's right around the corner. As in tomorrow, visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now. It happened sooner than I expected. We've got it. It's not actually all good news, but it is mostly good news because the SEC is going to play a 9-game conference schedule. Now, this has been a sticking point coming from the Big Ten side of things to say we're not expanding the playoff until you're playing the same number of games as us, because we've got a new era of college football here with NIL and the portal, and it looks like you and I are on really equal footing, and we shouldn't have to play an extra Power 4 game, whereas you do not. That is the good news, because that means hopefully the SEC is not going to have a cupcake game late in the regular season in the thick of a college football playoff chase to give their teams a de facto bye week before they go out and play rivalry week. So that is a good thing. That is good for the sport. More good games that matter is a good thing for college football. Now I'm going to pause. I'm going to let that settle and understand that this probably also means the expansion of the playoff that I hoped wasn't going to arise, probably going to get here next year and go to 16 teams. I don't know what other reason the SEC would have. Like, when you see this news, it's been talked about for so many years, debated and discussed and all that sort of stuff. The first question you say is why? Why now? Why would the SEC go and do this now? The answer, I think, is they have to get going on agreeing to a playoff format for next year, which they don't currently have, and agreeing on a television deal for that playoff, which they also don't currently have. So if the Big Ten wasn't going to agree to expansion, and we know the SEC and the Big Ten are driving the bus here with regards to the playoff and college football writ large, if you don't have them on the same page, well, nothing changes. So if the SEC wants to get more of its teams into the playoff because they truly believe that they're being deprived of a national championship or whatever, really they're just being deprived of money because teams like Alabama, South Carolina, and Ole Miss last year don't get into the college football playoff. That's what playoff expansion has always been about, and people are starting to see that and such, but I digress. The reason they would do this now is, okay, this means if this is the only way that we're going to be able to expand the playoffs so we can get more teams in, all right, well, I guess we have to do it. And you know what? I'm a ends justify the means sort of guy. I'm concerned first and foremost with the end product. I don't actually care how we get there. I just care that we get there. You know? Like, I don't care how many times the bill was debated in Congress and went in and out of committee and how it was passed 6 months later than you want it. As long as it gets there and it's a good idea, and there aren't always good ideas that make their way through the upper echelon of college football in the decision-making realm, as long as that happens, you know what? I'm happy. I'm going to be here for it. So the other good piece of news that comes with this 9-game conference schedule is that the SEC also said, hey, you all have to play one Power 4 non-conference opponent. Oh, man, it's like they listen to this show. It's as if I've talked about this all offseason, fully prepared in my head to have to do it again next offseason, and we will for the rest of the leagues. Because though I understand, according to Brett McMurphy, there are mathematical difficulties for the ACC to play a 9-game conference schedule, I hope they get there eventually. I hope everybody is there. The ACC is now the only school or the only conference of the Power 4 that's left starting next season that won't be playing a 9-game conference slate. I don't like that. I want more quality games that matter. I want you to go through your conference and not have an advantage over some of the other leagues as you try to make at-large playoff spots. And so that's the next step, is get them there. But for the SEC to also add on, you've got to have a Power 4 non-conference opponent. That doesn't affect everybody, but it affects a lot of people. Now, on the one hand, I love that, because my everydayers out there know that I am a proponent of a model that I think mostly I've come up with, where you have a conference challenge every single year on a 2-year home and home basis that then rotates throughout to ensure that every single conference is playing 9 conference games and that every single conference has its teams playing 1 Power 4 non-conference opponent. You can play 2 if you like. I won't fault you for that, but you need to play 1. I think you should need to play 1 so that the non-conference slate is a better product for fans and that it's just an overall more exciting sport. You don't have these games, whether for television or for people in person, that get out of hand super quickly. Those are the games that I know still have to exist. I am not suggesting we eliminate bye games in college football. Quite the opposite, as a matter of fact. But I want to standardize scheduling. This is a major step in the right direction. So I applaud Greg Sankey and the SEC athletic directors for taking this step towards making their conference a better product and towards making college football a better product as a result. Now, there is the thought I have in the back of my mind that makes me go, all right, if they're willing to do that, to risk having some more non-conference losses and some more conference losses, that probably ensures, number one, playoff expansion is on the way, and number two, for some reason, maybe it's just in their own camp, or maybe it's because they know the people making these decisions, they feel confident that this is going to allow them to get more teams into the college football playoff. Now, what you can see there, which is, of course, more something I have an objection with on college football playoff expansion in general, the regular season doesn't matter as much, and you might have more quality games, but they might not mean as much, which is what you currently have, because non-conference showdowns between top programs, when you have an expanded playoff, don't actually have to decide. They still matter, but they don't mean the same they don't have the same amount of importance as they used to, because you have a lot more leeway. You have a lot more flexibility. And so you should see more quality games, and there are some schools that are going to have to shuffle their schedule around, and everybody will have 3 protected matchups in the SEC, which I think is great, because that way you can ensure Texas is playing Oklahoma and Texas A&M every year. I don't really care who the third one is in the SEC. You can ensure Bama is playing Georgia and Auburn every year, that Florida is playing Georgia every. All that stuff is good and fine. It's 3 protected matchups and then 6 that will rotate around. That's all good. But I do wonder, does this mean the SEC is going to start campaigning and lobbying even harder for, hey, our 8-4 teams should be getting into the playoff? Because look, now we play 9 conference games. Now we do all that. We'll see. I'm going to stay optimistic on the day before the college football season actually starts. We've got Farmageddon tomorrow. I'll talk about 2 of the other matchups that we have in week 0 coming on Saturday. But overall, this is very good news. I do want to point out, because for those of you that watch the Locked On Big Ten Squad know, I'm obviously neutral arbiter of all things college football on this particular program. The ball is now in the Big Ten's court. Remember when Curt Cignetti called out the SEC scheduling philosophy? Well, guess what? They just ensured every single team has to play a quality Power 4 non-conference opponent. Your turn, Curt. Your turn, ACC, get to 9 games. But Curt Cignetti in particular, James Franklin at Penn State, someone pointed out to me the other day, I should have mentioned them on my Wednesday rant. They were correct, because Penn State's non-conference is a joke this year. They're going to play 3 easy games, have a bye, and then play Oregon. And we'll see how it goes for them. I think they're going to win that game. But that's not what is best for the sport. That's not what I want to see. I want every team to have a marquee non-conference game. I want those games to mean as much as possible. And then I want a 9-game conference slate where you retain the importance and value of those matchups throughout the season. That's what I want. And you know what? Whatever the motivations may be, We have gotten that from the SEC today. So I am positive, optimistic, and forward thinking today to begin the program. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Hit me up on Twitter, all of that good stuff. Speaking of the SEC, an old has-been reject, call him whatever you want, Dan Mullen is a coach again, and he's got nothing to gain this weekend. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. August 26th, that's next week, is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ or national champion before week one even kicks off, this is your moment. If you think you know who's winning the Heisman Trophy, who's winning the national championship, who's winning the Big Ten, the ACC, Clemson, the SEC, the Big 12, if you think you know, hey, you go take a crack at it. Yeah, you might know better than me. The Big 12 is so wild and crazy, but whatever you think you know about college football, you can go bet on it over with our friends at FanDuel. Visit the FanDuel app today. Start planning your futures bets now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only. Just one day. It's just a one day. FanDuel, play your game. Saturday is Dan Mullen's return to college football, and I'm excited. UNLV fans should be excited. I think Dan Mullen can succeed. I never felt like firing him at Florida was the obvious decision when you were going out to hire Billy Napier. It hasn't gone very well for the Gators. Pretty sure their record has actually been worse since firing him, and there were those posts, retweets, likes, whatever that people point out on social media back in the day of Dan Mullen acknowledging that, hey, Florida hasn't done great since Dan Mullen left. Oh, well, what do you know? So Dan Mullen is back at UNLV, and I don't believe the Rebels are a playoff contender this year. They opened the season on Saturday against Iowa State, and you only get one chance to make a first impression, which is really what's on the line here for Dan Mullen in some capacity. Reportedly, they're going to play both Alex Orji and Anthony Colandrea, the Virginia transfer. I've seen better options at quarterback. I guess you could do worse. I actually don't think Colandrea is bad. I don't know that he had a great support system around him at Virginia last year. In 11 games, he threw for over 2,100 yards, 13 touchdowns, and 11 interceptions, 62% completion. He can make plays from time to time. Alex Orji, of course, the Michigan transfer. Yeah, if he's legitimately in the running to be a guy you're relying on to throw the football, you have problems. Las Vegas, you have a problem. So for Dan Mullen's sake, I hope that is not the case. The reason I say there's all downside for Dan Mullen this weekend is they open with Idaho State. It's not a marquee football game. Now, I'm actually broadcasting Idaho State's game against Southern Utah in Cedar City next weekend, so I'm going to be watching the Idaho State game rather intently for broadcast prep. But also, I want to see what Dan Mullen's team looks like. He hasn't coached in many years. What's the identity of the offense going to be? How buttoned up is the team going to be in week one? They've brought in a who's who of has-been blue chip transfers like JoJo Earl, like Justin Flo, like Alex Orji, amongst others. So I'm curious to see how that works out. I mean, if he'd recruited those sorts of guys coming out of high school first, we would have said Dan Mullen has the best roster in the Mountain West. I don't know that he does this year. I think that nod goes to Boise State, but certainly the caliber of athlete he has brought in is above what your average Mountain West team is going to have. The question comes down to whether he can get them to play cohesively and play good football and, frankly, shake off the rust. Now, Idaho State's a good team to do that with on paper. They haven't had a winning season at the FCS ranks competing in the Big Sky since 2018. They've started to take some steps forward as a program. They can score the ball a lot at the FCS level. They can throw the ball all over the field and will do so. But this is a no-win scenario of sorts for Dan Mullen on Saturday, because if you go out and as a well over 20-point favorite beat the living daylights out of Idaho State, well, guess what? Everyone's going to look and go, oh, okay, congratulations, you can beat Idaho State. On the other hand, for a roster I have questions about, a coach who hasn't done this in quite some time, if you come out and you look a little rusty, if you look a little shaky, well, suddenly people might start to worry. I'd encourage you to not overreact one way or the other. UNLV will have other games, most notably against UCLA, who's coming to Allegiant Stadium later in the non-conference slate. That's the game that you can really start to measure what the Rebels will be, because that's an actual Big Ten team. I don't think they're a great Big Ten team, but they're still a Big Ten team, and that's a higher caliber roster than you're going up against here against Idaho State. So I don't think there's a lot to learn. I think UNLV fans should be excited because it's the dawn of a new era, because they're going to win the game. I just don't think you're going to be able to make a ton of strong takeaways necessarily, other than, hey, that was fun. And you know what, UNLV fans? I'm here for that. Because you guys went through the ringer for several decades as football fans, and then Barry Odom brought you back to life, and then he bolts for Purdue, who are starting the North Carolina transfer, Ryan Brown at quarterback. Ryan Brown is his name. He runs a lot, and you'll know that he throws a lot. So, UNLV is a team that's brought in a bunch of transfers, and they're coming off a really successful season in which they were consistently and justifiably inside the top 25. They picked up some really solid wins a year ago. But they're a team that kind of has an element of mystery. So too does UCF, who I'm talking about later in today's show, that I'm down on for several reasons for this year, not necessarily forever, but for this year. I'm down on UCF. But these are programs that are trying to do kind of the Indiana, the Colorado, 30 to 40 transfers are coming aboard. Let's throw everybody at the wall, spaghetti style, and see what sticks. So I'm excited to watch UNLV because I'm curious to see what they look like. That'll be a fun way to do game prep for me next week. But there's nothing Dan Mullen, unfortunately for him, can gain other than getting his guys in shape and trying to figure out who your quarterback's going to be. I think they're better off going with Colin Drea because he's a more capable passer, and I don't suspect Dan Mullen wants to throw the ball 12 times in a game. I think he wants to do a little bit more than that, so I don't think Alex Orji is really your guy. I also wanted to touch base on the other game that's happening after Farmageddon tomorrow, which I will have a reaction show up here for you on the channel, wherever you're listening to or watch this show. Reaction show season is so back. There will be one every week of the college football season on this channel, starting tomorrow until the season, the regular season comes to a close and conference championship weekend. Reaction to playoff games. It's finally that time of year. But the other game is Kansas and Fresno State. Now, Matt Entz is not to be trifled with. And I had Emmanuel Henderson on recently here on the program last week, and he's great. Should be a good player in Kansas's offense, really explosive athlete, hasn't had the chance really to pop in college football, could become a household name at receiver by the end of the year. They still have Jalen Daniels at quarterback. They still have Lance Leipold as their coach. They've done a great job holding on to him. Having a letdown season last year was a big part of that, of course. But Kansas is almost a 2-touchdown favorite against Fresno State. I don't know that I would pick Kansas to cover in that spot. That's a stay away for me. I'd lean towards Fresno State plus 13. The reason is Matt Entz, if you don't know that name, was a longtime coach at this program called North Dakota State. He went on staff as an assistant last year at USC and then went over and took the Fresno State job. So Fresno State's a program that one day can return to the college football playoff. I don't know if that's this year. They've named E.J. Warner their quarterback, who's certainly been productive over his career at a couple of Group of 5 schools. He turns the ball over a lot. We'll have to protect it against the Jayhawks. I expect Kansas to win. Won't be shocked if this game gets uncomfortable. Entz is a heck of a coach. I mean, a heck of a college football coach. So Kansas, you've officially been warned. I, Spencer McLaughlin, host of the Locked On College Football podcast, have warned you, even though it's week 1 and you have a veteran quarterback and a veteran coach, and that's why I'm not picking an upset, and I think Kansas will be okay. Don't be surprised if at least for a half maybe, that game's a bit uncomfortable. It's the first year for Coach Entz and the Bulldogs, so I don't have lofty expectations for him in 2024. I'm just saying he's got a quarterback that's thrown for some more than a few yards in his college career, and he's a really good coach. That can be a formula to, at the very least, make things exciting, which I hope it is. Game previews and thoughts were so back. Back to the season front, UCF last in the Big 12. First, this episode brought to you by Rugiet. Guys, you've probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them, but if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugiet Ready. Rugiet Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rugiet's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast. On average, in 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. If traditional options haven't worked, Rugiet might be the answer. Over 150,000 men have already made the switch, and now you can too. Head to Rugiet.com/LockedOnCollege. Use the code LockedOnCollege to get 15% off today. That's RUGIET.com/LockedOnCollege. Use the promo code LockedOnCollege for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rugiet website for full safety information. Check them out at Rugiet.com/LockedOnCollege. All right, UCF fans, cover your ears. UCF is my last place team in the Big 12. Coming into this season, for those watching on YouTube, you can see I have UCF power rated dead last in the conference behind West Virginia, Arizona, and Oklahoma State, along with Cincinnati. Now, what's curious about this is UCF's win total is 5.5. That's higher than I thought it would be. UCF and Purdue are two teams that are in very similar spots. Their coaches went to major programs once upon a time to be a head coach. It didn't work out. But at the group of 5 level, the coaches had success. And that's why he's in the current position that he's in. They've brought in around 40 transfers or so, meaning I have no actual idea what to make of the roster. Maybe they'll start getting it clicking by the end of the year, but who knows what the schedule's like. They're probably facing a deficit on a weekly basis. Central Florida, starting a transfer from Florida Atlantic. He was competing with Taven Jackson, who was a backup at Indiana last year, and one other guy who was in the quarterback room. So I have UCF going 3-9. 2 of those wins are going to be the first 2 weeks. UCF is going to be the worst 2-0 team in college football because they start with Jacksonville State and North Carolina A&T. So those 2 games at home, just based on roster difference, should be wins. No problem. Okay. From there, I think it's going to get rough. Now, week 3 is interesting. I will tell you, full stop, I'm rooting for UCF in week 3. At home, they play North Carolina. If Scott Frost is able to beat Bill Belichick, I think North Carolina's got a better roster than UCF going into the year. But it would not shock me if UCF wins that game. They're at home. I'm really down on North Carolina this year. And I hope that Scott Frost and company figure out a way to win that football game because I want the Bill Belichick experiment to flame out so that North Carolina can go and find an actual coach that's going to take them into the future and realize their full potential as an ACC football school. So I think they'll lose to North Carolina, but I could see them winning. They'll have a couple of tune-ups. They'll be confident. Fans will be riding high. I mean, sure, why not? Why not? I might change my mind on that prediction going into the game. I mean, North Carolina's starting a G5 transfer at quarterback as well, and Gio Lopez from South Alabama. So now he's a gamer. I kind of like Gio Lopez, kind of, but not a ton. So then they go at Kansas State. Yeah, that's a loss. Kansas at home. That's a loss. At Cincinnati, that's one of your more winnable games. I think between at Cincinnati and West Virginia, UCF finds a way to win. I'm going with West Virginia because it's at home. I don't think UCF will be winless in Big 12 conference play this year. West Virginia is in a similar spot. First-year head coach. It's a tear-down rebuild. They're just looking to have that one iconic win, that one moment that makes you go, oh, okay, we got something. Oh, okay, this feels really good, and with a good offseason and a recruiting class or 2 to get incorporated and some portal success, we'll be able to go and get the program on an upward trajectory. That's all UCF and West Virginia are looking for this year. So when they play each other, It's a smaller version of that. So then they go on the road, play Baylor, lost. Houston at home, I like Houston this year. Connor Wegman and company, I like the Cougs. I do. That's a loss. At Texas Tech, never in a million years will I pick UCF to win at Texas Tech. I don't even know what would have to happen this year for me to think UCF could go to Lubbock and beat the Red Raiders. I don't know. I don't know if there's anything within reason that could take place that would make me think that. Oklahoma State at home, I think the Cowboys are a bounce-back team. At BYU, they're not winning at Lavelle Edwards Stadium. I've got 3-9 with the potential for 4-8. I don't know why the win total is 5.5. So that does give me pause. Obviously, I'm on here roasting UCF, and they're not any good and all this sort of stuff. It doesn't mean the program long-term is going to just completely stink. The 5.5 win total, it makes me think it should be lower than that. It really should. UCF was a disappointing team last year. I thought with Gus Malzahn, I think I had them 8-4, 9-3. They had KJ Jefferson, who had won games in the SEC at quarterback. They should have had a great running game, and I mean, they often did with RJ Harvey, but they didn't put it all together enough, and now they've gone in a different direction. I understand why they did all of that, but when you have these massive portal classes, there's just an element that I can't get behind, and either Vegas knows something that I don't know. I mean, the schedule all in all is not that hard. Like that could be what's rooted in the 5.5 win total, according to our friends at FanDuel. I would take that under every day of the week. That and North Carolina, two of my favorite unders of the year. North Carolina at 7.5, even with an easy schedule. I take the under there. But yeah, you've got Kansas State, you've got Texas Tech, but you don't have Utah, you don't have Arizona State, you don't have Iowa State. I mean, it could be worse. It could be worse. And there are so many winnable games on here for UCF in theory compared to matchups that I just don't think they're going to be able to get over the hump with this year. I mean, you talk about at Texas Tech, at Baylor, at BYU at the end of the year, once Bear Bachmeier will be 11 games into his BYU career, presuming he stays healthy, at Kansas State. Like, those are ones I'm just going, okay, no, that's not happening. But, I mean, Houston is a team I want to like. Maybe they're not quite ready. You got them at home. West Virginia is in the exact same position as you. You got them at home. Oklahoma State, what if they're just as bad as last year? I don't think they will be, but you've got them at home. And North Carolina is a team that gives you an interesting non-conference matchup in a battle of first-year head coaches where I don't think North Carolina is very good. They did lose a couple key guys in the portal this offseason from their defense, and Amari Campbell and Bo Atkinson. Now, they bring over Kamari House, the linebacker transfer. I think that fills the Amari Campbell void at that particular spot. But, I mean, I don't know how Belichick's going to work coaching college kids. It's a lot different than the NFL. He's never done it before. He'll only be a few games in. I think he'll already have a loss on the schedule to TCU at that point. So, you know, props to North Carolina for having a pair of Big 12 teams in its non-conference slate. Of course, I was talking about that earlier on today's show. But, yeah, I think UCF is 3-9, maybe 4, but I lean 3-9. Alex Grinch is their defensive coordinator. I don't know what Scott Frost is thinking. I have absolutely, positively no idea. They also brought in guard Memelar, a transfer from Washington, one of many that they brought over. If he's a starter on the offensive line, you have offensive line problems. That's just a recipe to not be good. Alex Grinch, I never thought I would see the day. I thought we had seen enough. If the Oklahoma tenure wasn't enough, which it wasn't for Lincoln Riley, how is his time at USC not enough? Even the aura of Alex Grinch got up to Madison, Wisconsin, where he was a defensive analyst last year. I don't know why. And they missed a bowl game for the first time in 20 some odd years. Like, I just can't understand it. But there have been other coaching hires like that, coordinator hires that have proved me wrong before. So maybe Scott Frost knows something I don't. But I cannot get behind UCF with Alex Grinch as a defensive coordinator. So at the very least, I think there might be a little coaching edge in the coordinator department for North Carolina. Though their offensive coordinator is Freddie Kitchens. So, we'll have to wait and see. That's a battle of sub-mid right there. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. Until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day and enjoy the football.